Could women in the Middle Ages really fool everyone into thinking they were men? Did some actually live entire lives under false identities? How far would they go to escape the constraints placed on their gender? Number 5. Joan of Arc, the warrior maid in men's armor. Was she a saint or just a teenager with extraordinary courage? Joan of Arc remains one of history's most famous cross-dressers, though her case differs slightly from others. Born to peasant parents in 1412 in Domremy, France, Joan claimed to hear divine voices instructing her to support Charles VII and recover France from English domination during the 100 Years' War. At just 16 years old, Joan cut her hair short and donned men's clothing and armor, not primarily as a disguise, but as practical attire for her divine mission. She rode astride horses like a man, led troops into battle, and carried a banner and sword. Her male attire became both functional and symbolic, representing her rejection of traditional female roles and her commitment to her military calling. When captured by Burgundian troops, who later sold her to the English, Joan's male clothing became central to the charges against her. During her trial in 1431, her judges were particularly fixated on her masculine dress. Court records show they repeatedly questioned her about it, considering it a sign of heresy and disobedience to church teaching. Joan temporarily agreed to wear women's clothing while imprisoned, but soon returned to male attire, claiming soldiers had taken her dresses and that men's clothing protected her from harassment by guards. Her persistence in wearing men's clothing was used as evidence of her relapse into heresy. What makes Joan's story particularly fascinating is that her cross-dressing wasn't about deception. Everyone knew she was female, but about rejecting the limitations of womanhood in medieval society. The English authorities understood how threatening this was to the social order. When they burned her at the stake in May 1431, they were eliminating not just a military threat, but a woman who had dared to step completely outside her prescribed gender role. 25 years later, a posthumous retrial declared Joan innocent of all charges, and she was later canonized as a saint in 1920. To this day, historians debate whether Joan's voices were divine inspiration, psychological phenomena, or strategic political tools. But one thing remains clear: her male attire was a revolutionary act that challenged medieval gender boundaries in the most public way possible. Number 4. Pope Joan, the woman who, maybe, ruled the church. Did a woman really sit on the papal throne disguised as a man? Few medieval legends have proven as persistent or as controversial as that of Pope Joan, a supposed female pope who allegedly reigned for a brief period around the 9th century. According to the most common version of the tale, Joan was an exceptionally intelligent Englishwoman who fell in love with a monk and disguised herself as a man to join him in the monastery. Taking the name John Anglicus, she continued her masquerade for years, impressing everyone with her scholarly abilities. Her reputation for wisdom and learning grew until she rose through church ranks, eventually being elected pope. Her secret remained intact until, during a papal procession, she unexpectedly gave birth in the street, revealing her true sex to the shocked crowd. Some accounts claim she died in childbirth, while others say she was dragged behind a horse or stoned to death as punishment for her deception. The first written mention of Pope Joan appears in the 13th century chronicles of Jean de Mailly and Martin of Opava, several centuries after her supposed reign. Martin's account places her between the pontificates of Leo IV, who died in 855, and Benedict III. The tale gained such widespread acceptance that for centuries it was believed new popes were required to sit on a special chair with a hole in the seat, the sedia stercoraria, so their genitals could be verified by a young cleric who would then announce testiculos habet e benependentis. He has testicles and they hang well. Modern scholars have largely dismissed Pope Joan as fictional. Church records show no gap between Leo IV and Benedict III, and contemporary documents make no mention of the female pope. The chair with the hole was likely used in Byzantine toilet ceremonies that symbolized the human nature of the pope. Despite these historical uncertainties, the legend of Pope Joan captured the medieval imagination and has persisted for centuries. Her story appeared in dozens of chronicles, was depicted in art and literature, and became part of the popular understanding of papal history until the Reformation, when Protestant writers eagerly used her tale to criticize the Catholic Church. Whether real or imaginary, Pope Joan represents something powerful. The notion that a woman's intellect and capability could equal or surpass those of her male contemporaries, if only given the chance. Her legend embodies the tension between medieval gender restrictions and individual female ambition. In a society that barred women from education and power, the most direct path to achievement was sometimes to become, in appearance at least, a man. Number 3. Catalina de Aruso, the nun lieutenant who conquered the New World. How does a cloistered nun transform into a swashbuckling conquistador? The extraordinary life of Catalina de Aruso, known as La Monja Alferez, the lieutenant nun, reads like adventure fiction, except its documented history. Born in 1585 or 1592 in Spain's Basque region, Catalina was placed in the Dominican convent of San Sebastián el Antigua at age 4. Facing the prospect of taking permanent vows at 15, she made a daring escape. Using scissors and needle, she fashioned men's clothing from her habit, cut her hair short, and fled into the night, reinventing herself as a young man named Pedro de Aruso. After several years working as a page for various masters throughout Spain, Catalina, Pedro signed onto a ship bound for the Americas, eventually landing in what is now Colombia. In the New World, her disguise gave her freedoms unimaginable for women of her era. She drank, gambled, fought duels, and eventually joined the Spanish colonial army, where she earned the rank of lieutenant for her bravery in battle against indigenous peoples. Her violent temperament landed her in frequent trouble. By her own account in her autobiography, she killed at least 10 people in duels and brawls, including her own brother, whom she encountered by chance, without him recognizing her. After one particularly bloody fight in Cusco, Peru, she sought sanctuary in a church, where she confessed her biological sex to the bishop to avoid being handed over to secular authorities. Rather than being punished for her decades of deception, Catalina's extraordinary story earned her celebrity status. After returning to Spain in 1624, she petitioned King Philip IV, who granted her a military pension in recognition of her service. Even more remarkably, she traveled to Rome, where Pope Urban VIII granted her special dispensation to continue wearing men's clothing. Catalina's autobiography, dictated around 1626, provides vivid details of her adventures, though historians debate its complete accuracy. What makes her account particularly valuable is that unlike many cross-dressing women in history who were only discovered after death, Catalina openly acknowledged her biological sex later in life, while continuing to live as a man. After her European tour, Catalina returned to the Americas as Antonio de Aruso, working as a mule driver between Mexico City and Veracruz. She died around 1650 in New Spain, modern Mexico, having lived most of her life successfully as a man. Her autobiography became a sensation when published long after her death, inspiring plays, novels, and eventually films. Catalina's story offers a fascinating glimpse into the fluidity of gender in colonial Spanish society. While her case was exceptional, it demonstrates that with sufficient boldness and the right circumstances, a woman could escape the narrow confines of feminine existence and access the vastly wider world of masculine privilege. Was she transgender in the modern sense, or simply pragmatic about accessing male privilege? That question continues to intrigue historians and gender scholars today. Number 2. Christina of Sweden, the queen who became a king. Can a queen decide to live as a king? Christina of Sweden didn't just disguise herself as a male temporarily. She systematically rejected feminine identity throughout her remarkable life, creating one of history's most fascinating gender nonconformity cases. Born in 1626 to King Gustav II Adolf of Sweden and Maria Eleonora of Brandenburg, Christina was raised as a prince rather than a princess at her father's instruction after he died in battle. Her education matched that of any male royal heir. She studied for 10 hours daily, mastering 10 languages, philosophy, religion, and politics. From childhood, she preferred male clothing and activities, excelling at traditionally masculine pursuits, like riding and hunting. When Christina ascended to the throne at age 18, she puzzled the court with her deep voice, mannish gait, and disinterest in marriage. Contemporary accounts describe her as wearing men's boots, sitting not as a man sits, but as men usually sit. She openly declared she felt an insurmountable distaste for marriage and for all the things that females talk about and do. After ruling Sweden for 10 years, Christina made the shocking decision to abdicate in 1654. While her conversion to Catholicism, forbidden for Swedish monarchs, was the official reason, her abdication also freed her from the gender expectations placed on a female sovereign. Upon leaving Sweden, she cut her hair short, adopted the name Count Donna, and traveled through Europe in men's attire. In Denmark, her male disguise apparently worked so well that women found him attractive. When she arrived in Innsbruck, she asked to be received as a king, not as a queen. Christina's male dress became her preferred mode when traveling, though she would sometimes appear in more feminine attire at formal occasions after settling in Rome. Christina's gender presentation represented more than practical convenience. It reflected her self-conception. In her autobiography, she wrote that from birth she had an overwhelming antipathy to everything that women do and say. She believed herself to have a masculine mind in a female body. When Pope Alexander VII welcomed her to Rome, he remarked that she was a queen without a realm, a Christian without faith, and a woman without shame. In Rome, Christina established an academy for politicians and men of letters, collected art, sponsored musicians, and involved herself in European politics. She attempted to secure crowns in Naples and Poland, plotted military campaigns, and maintained correspondence with major intellectual figures like Descartes. Christina died in 1689, requesting a simple burial in Rome's Basilica of St. Peter. Her gender-bending life generated centuries of speculation. More recently, some scholars have suggested she may have had an intersex condition, noting contemporary descriptions of her misshapen body. Others see in her a historical example of transgender identity. Whatever modern label might apply, Christina herself was clear. I am neither male nor hermaphrodite, as some people in the world have passed me for. Number 1. Mary Read, the pirate who lived 2 lives. Would you believe one of history's most notorious pirates lived most of her life as a man? Mary Read's extraordinary journey from illegitimate child to feared pirate represents one of the most well-documented cases of a woman living successfully as a man in the medieval and early modern eras. Born in England around 1690, Mary's mother dressed her as a boy from childhood as a scheme to extract money from her mother-in-law. When the grandmother's financial support ended, Mary, already accustomed to male dress and behavior, found work as a footboy. As she grew older, seeking adventure and better pay, she joined the British military during the War of the Spanish Succession. Mary served with distinction in infantry and cavalry regiments in Flanders, fighting alongside male soldiers who never suspected her sex. During this military service, she fell in love with a Flemish soldier, and only then revealed herself as a woman. The couple married and established an inn called the Three Horseshoes, near Breda, Netherlands. When her husband died, Mary resumed male clothing and rejoined the military. Her ship to the West Indies was captured by pirates, and Mary, still presenting as a man, joined their ranks. By 1720, she was serving aboard the pirate ship, captained by Calico Jack Rackham, alongside another female pirate, Anne Bonny. According to Captain Charles Johnson's A General History of the Pirates, 1724. Mary and Anne were among the fiercest fighters in the crew. Cursing and brandishing pistols when their ship was attacked by pirate hunters, Mary's gender was revealed to Anne Bonny, who had developed an attraction to the handsome sailor. To Bonny's surprise, Mary opened her shirt to reveal she was a woman. Captain Rackham, jealous of Bonny's interest in Reed, was then also let in on the secret. When their ship was captured off Jamaica in October 1720, eyewitnesses reported that only Mary Reed, Anne Bonny, and one male pirate offered resistance, while the rest of the crew, including Captain Rackham, hid below deck. At their trial in November 1720, testimony revealed that both women had fought like braves men and had been dressed in men's jackets and long trousers with handkerchiefs tied around their heads. Found guilty and sentenced to hang, both women pleaded their bellies, declared themselves pregnant, which temporarily stayed their executions. Mary died in prison in April 1721, likely from fever, before giving birth. The fate of Anne Bonny remains unclear, with some records suggesting she was eventually released. Mary Reed's life demonstrates the complex motivations that could drive women to adopt male identities. In her case, it began as economic necessity, continued for career opportunities in the military, and eventually became a path to the extraordinary freedom of pirate life. Her story illuminates how gender boundaries in the medieval period, while rigid in theory, could prove remarkably permeable in practice. Would these women have made the same choices today, in our supposedly more enlightened age? Or does their courage in defying gender norms reveal something timeless about the human desire for freedom and self-determination?